Razer has redesigned the Blade 18 for 2025, making it more powerful than ever. So you could say the blade has been sharpened, but it's still got some rough edges, and I'll cover both in this review. The Blade 18 features Razer's signature CNC aluminum chassis with anodized matte black finish. This gives the blade a more premium look and feel compared to all other laptops out there. It's the closest to Windows gaming laptop comes to the solid build of Apple's MacBook. The only downside is the black finish is a fingerprint magnet, but it's not too difficult to clean with a microfiber cloth. Overall build quality feels great. There's hardly any flex, even when going out of your way to push it. It's a solid tank during normal use. The hinges feel smooth and sturdy, and I didn't notice any problems if I push it back too far or rip it open too fast. I'd assume the hinge being metal on metal should be fine long term. There's a small indent on the front to help make opening easier, and the screen goes back a reasonable amount. The Blade 18 has been redesigned with performance in mind this year, so it's no surprise to find that it's bigger compared to last gen. Razer advertises it as the thinnest 18-inch gaming laptop available, and technically they're correct. Though Lenovo's Legion 9i is pretty much the same at its thickest point. The blade by itself weighs just under 7 pounds or 3.2 kilos, increasing to 9.7 pounds or 4.4 kilos with a fairly large 400-watt charger included. Without the charger, it's the lightest 18-inch gaming laptop we've tested this year, and actually tied exactly with their last-gen model. It's crazy to me that Alienware's 16-inch Area 51 weighs more. That thing really is a brick. The blade isn't quite the lightest 18-inch model once you factor in the chargers, but it's not far off, and most of the competition is still heavier. The Blade 18 is the only Razer laptop with an Intel processor this year, and mine has Nvidia's RTX 5090 laptop graphics, 32 gigs of RAM, and an 18-inch 4K 240Hz screen. But you can customize it with lower or higher specs when ordering with the link below. And if it has a good sale, we'll list it on our gaminglaptop.deals website so you can save money. The keyboard has per-key RGB backlighting, and it looks great. It's brighter and clearer than most other laptops. When you press the function key, it lights up the shortcuts you can interact with, and it's cool that things like volume mute show up in red to set it apart. Same deal if you hold shift. Different parts of the key light up to show what you can do. You can use the F10 and F11 shortcuts to adjust keyboard brightness, but as usual, Razer has far too many adjustments here. If you want to go from max to off, you have to press F10 like 15 times. And then in their Synapse software, you can adjust it in 1% increments, which is just far more granular than any other laptop. There are 12 lighting effects available through here too, but more customization is possible if you install Chroma. You can also set the lighting on the lid logo to static, breathing, or off, depending on if the charger is connected or not. There's also RGB lighting in the glass panel underneath. This lets you see inside, but what you see isn't the actual board. It's just there for show. There are some options in software to control the lighting, but no matter what combination I tried, I wasn't able to keep it on with the laptop's lid closed, which kinda defeats the whole purpose of it, as you can't see it when it's lit up and on your desk. I thought maybe it could be a flex while you're walking around with your laptop lid closed under your arm, but no, the RGB would just be off in that case. The keyboard has been redesigned this year, now with 1.5mm of key travel, which is 36% more than before. I liked typing on it. The key presses are a little tactile, no problems there. The power button is part of the keyboard, but an accidental press doesn't do anything. You have to hold it for slightly longer to put it to sleep. This is the first time the Blade 18 has a numpad. The only compromises appear to be that it has smaller 0 and enter keys. That and the side speaker vents are a little smaller than before. Despite the addition of the numpad, the glass touchpad is still centered on the laptop, so your right hand sits on it while typing, but palm rejection selection seems good. I didn't have any problems with the touchpad while typing. There are front-facing speakers on either side of the keyboard, and more underneath on the sides towards the front. They sound pretty good. They're clear, there's some bass, and they get loud. Though there was a little wrist rest vibration at higher volume. That was with the EQ mode set to music, which was default. The Latencymon results weren't great in our 5-minute idle test. Port selection is good. I've got nothing to complain about, other than maybe it would have been nice to move some of the bulkier ports, like power and HDMI, onto the back. The power cable is way harder to remove than other laptops. Hopefully that loosens up a little over time. The display outputs offer a mix for connecting a monitor to the discrete or integrated graphics, but using a mux switch doesn't let you change which GPU the ports connect to. Getting inside requires removing 12 TR5 screws, all the same length. The bottom panel comes off on its own, no pry tools required, but we don't all have Razer laptops, so I'll leave a link to the tools I use to open laptops below. Once inside, we've got the battery down the front, 2 RAM slots just above near the middle, the SSD in the primary M.2 slot, a second M.2 slot on the left, with the Wi-Fi 7 card just above. Wi-Fi performance is fine, and similar to the MediaTek options like the one in Razer's Blade 16 or 14. But other Intel-based options, including last year's Blade 18, performed better. Speeds from the installed 2TB PCIe Gen 4 SSD were great, and that goes for the UHS-2 SD card slot too. The card clicks in and doesn't stick out much, so there's less risk of bumping it. Razer's website mentions that RAM can be upgraded to DDR5 6400, while at least one of the M.2 slots supports PCIe Gen 5. But for some reason, they don't actually let you buy the laptop with these faster options. So that's an extra cost you'll have to sort out if you want faster. I confirmed both M.2 slots fit drives with chips on both sides. The upgrade score is decent, as we can swap both memory sticks, both M.2 slots, and Wi-Fi. But I take off half a point for the uncommon TR5 screws, as I think that just makes it harder for normal people with basic tools to open. If you don't care about that, then imagine it scored 6. People tell me Torx screws are better because they're less likely to strip, but they're the only screw type I've ever personally stripped. Anyway, the Blade 18 is still powered by the largest possible 99 watt-hour battery, despite the third cooling fan being placed right in the middle. The display tab of the Synapse software lets you enable battery refresh rate, which automatically lowers the screen's refresh rate to 60 Hz when you unplug the charger to save power. This is why the screen flashes black, and it goes back up when you plug back in. You can also use the Function plus R shortcut to swap between refresh rates at any time. Battery health optimizer is disabled by default, but you can use this to limit the maximum charge of the battery between 50 to 80% in 5% increments. This helps improve the longevity of the battery, as keeping it fully charged for extended periods can degrade it. Battery life might not look impressive, but it's a good result when compared against other 18-inch laptops, as those tend to drain power faster. It lasts way longer compared to last year's model with smaller battery in any case. While only Lenovo's Legion 9 offered better battery life, it lost 24% of its battery charge while asleep for 24 hours. But this isn't a fair comparison with the other laptops, as it depends on the size of the laptop's battery. Here's how much battery power was lost on average per hour, which is a fair comparison. It's not too different when compared to the other 18-inch models. But yeah, you might want to hibernate instead of sleep if you're not going to use it for a few hours. Let's check out thermals next. The CPU and GPU are covered by a vapor chamber cooler, and they're using Honeywell PTM7958 thermal interface gel. 3 fans bring air in through holes on the bottom panel, while the 2 main fans also pull air in through the keyboard. The smaller third fan in the middle of the battery blows air straight out of the back. All air gets exhausted down and out the back, so no hot air blows on your mouse hand. Razer's Synapse software allows us to change between different performance modes, which from lowest to highest are silent, balanced, performance, turbo, and custom. You can change the fan in any mode between auto, a specified fixed fan speed, or you can set a manual fan curve for the CPU and GPU separately to set fan speed based on temperature. In custom mode, to keep things simple, we've just tested with the CPU and GPU both on max, but you can adjust the power of each. I wasn't able to enable CPU overclocking as it thinks I've got a firmware update available, but I don't. That's a bug. And GPU overclocking doesn't apply one by default, so we haven't added one. On battery mode, you only get access to balanced mode and a little fan control, and you can use the function +P shortcut to cycle between the performance modes. The internal temperatures are fine at idle. The rest of the results are from combined CPU and GPU stress tests, which aim to represent a worst-case full-load scenario. Turbo mode gets the processor up to 90 degrees, so no thermal throttling, but on the warmer side. Running with custom mode and the fans maxed out didn't lower the CPU temp, but GPU temp lowers a couple of degrees. Running with the lid closed was warmer, but not entirely for the reason you'd expect. Air comes in through the keyboard, so closing the lid will reduce airflow, but that's only half the story. More on that in a moment. Using a stand was able to lower temps a few degrees, and the stand had the same effect as the cooling pad I test with, linked below, running at 800 RPM. Running the cooling pad with faster fans reduced temps a little more, but as you'll hear soon, it can get very loud. The NVIDIA control panel says the RTX 5090 laptop GPU could run up to 175 watts with dynamic boost, and with the CPU and GPU loaded up at the same time, ours runs at 160 watts in turbo and custom modes, so I'd classify this as a full-powered 5090. Interestingly, running with the lid closed boosted the GPU by 10 watts. I'm not exactly sure why, but it's not the first time I've seen more GPU power used with a monitor connected to the HDMI port in this test. This extra power would contribute to the increase in temps we saw with the lid closed, so it's a combination of keyboard air intakes being covered and extra power. Anyway, these power levels are a nice improvement compared to the last Blade 18 I tested, which only maxed the CPU out at just 40 watts and the GPU at 160 watts in this same test. This year's newer Blade 18 provides more than double the wattage to the processor, which equals more performance. The processor is running above 4 GHz on all P and E cores in turbo mode. And yeah, for context, last gen it struggled to hit 2 GHz in the same test. So that extra power is definitely helping. Here's how an actual game performs with the different performance modes in use. I've got Cyberpunk 2077 at ultra settings running at native in purple, and DLSS upscaling on performance in red to boost performance. Even with the screen's native 3840 by 2400 resolution, so higher than standard 4K, we're able to get decent performance in all modes with DLSS on. Gaming on Type-C at 4K doesn't work well, but if you're willing to drop down to 1080p, 100 watts of Type-C charge is enough to play smoothly. The CPU can use a little more power in a CPU-only workload like Cinebench, where the GPU is idle. Turbo and custom modes were basically the same, while a Type-C charger pretty much matches what you can get from silent mode with the large 400 watt charger. Performance is quite good when compared against all other laptops tested, though it is beaten slightly by a number of smaller 16-inch laptops. Still, for the most part, it's decent relative to the bigger 18-inch models tested, and scoring 43% higher compared to the last-gen Blade 18, which isn't able to boost its CPU power as high. Performance lowers if we unplug the charger and run on battery power. This year's Blade 18 is now scoring 61% higher compared to last gen when it comes to multi-core performance, meaning it's much better now when you're away from a wall outlet. As for keyboard temps, most laptops I test rest are in the low 30 degrees Celsius range on the keyboard at idle, and the Blade 18 was around this in the warmest spot in the middle of the keyboard, so it only felt slightly warm. It gets warmer with the stress test running, but the keyboard area still only feels a little warm. The WASD area is cold, as the fan pulls air in through it. Stepping up to balanced mode is a little warmer in the center, and the wrist rest is only a little warm feeling because it's metal and it conducts heat. Performance mode is much the same, as the fans get louder to compensate for the extra power that's pumping through the CPU and GPU to deliver better performance. It still feels much the same in turbo mode. The middle is warm, but not yet uncomfortable. Right at the back does feel hot, but you don't need to touch there. Custom mode with the fans maxed out felt similar to the touch, but the fans are running even louder now to make up for the extra power. The keyboard hotspot in the middle wasn't too bad relative to most other laptops tested, but it was on the warmer side when we're comparing against other 18-inch models. Generally, bigger 18-inch designs run cooler, as they've got more space for cooling, but the Blade 18 is the thinnest and lightest out of these 18-inch options. Anyway, it doesn't feel hot, so all good. But how loud do the fans get? Let's have a listen. The fans were off when idling in silent mode. Fan noise gets louder in the higher modes, as you'd expect, but turbo mode isn't too bad compared to other laptops. It's one of the quieter 18-inch options, which may explain why the keyboard was also a little warmer compared to most of them. But I think we've got a good mix here with the Blade. It doesn't feel hot to the touch, and the fans aren't making you deaf. That said, you can run with less fan noise with the lower performance modes. Turbo mode has a perceived loudness 21% higher compared to performance mode, or 75% louder than balanced mode, and both of those modes are still able to get us above 80 FPS in Cyberpunk 2077 at 4K ultra settings with DLSS on performance mode, so you can absolutely find a better mix of good enough performance with quieter fans. The screen is a bit different. It's almost using the same panel as Lenovo's Legion 9i. The only difference seems to be that the one in the Blade has a matte finish instead of glossy, and the Blade does not have the 3D option that Lenovo offers. You can run the screen in either 3840 by 2400 240Hz mode, or use the Synapse software to swap to 1920 by 1200 440Hz mode with a reboot. Lenovo's Legion 9 only lets you swap in the BIOS, which the Blade can do too, but it's more convenient to have this toggle in software. That said, the Blade software has a small bug, because in 1080p mode, it shows that I'm in 4K mode. But if I click 4K again and reboot, it sorts itself out. Color gamut is decent, but contrast is below average, even for an IPS panel. And without the glossy finish, it just doesn't pop as much as the Legion screen. Brightness is decent though. Razer advertises it with 500 nits, and ours went slightly above this at full brightness. It's brighter compared to most OLED panels, and only really beaten by mini LED options, which typically get brighter, though it's about the same brightness as last year's Blade 18, which did have a mini LED panel. So this year's Blade 18 uses an IPS panel, as 18-inch OLED doesn't exist yet. But I think Razer made a good choice picking this over mini LED. IPS means there's the potential for backlight bleed. Ours was fine, but this will vary between each panel. Screen response time is great, even in the 4K mode. For a 240Hz screen, ideally we want transitions to occur within the 4.17 millisecond refresh window, and most of the transitions were faster than this. But we can lower the average gray-to-gray response time to 2.8 milliseconds in the 440Hz mode. In other words, we can make the screen faster with a reboot at the compromise of the 1080p resolution. And this is why I think Razer made the right choice avoiding Mini LED, at least for competitive gamers that want an 18-inch screen, as Mini LED equals slower response time, as it takes longer for the backlight zones to light up when changing content on screen. This year's Blade 18 is only beaten by OLED laptops, and given there aren't any 18-inch OLED panels yet, that means it's the fastest 18-inch screen available. The Blade 18 has broken our record in the total system latency test, which is the amount of time between a mouse click and when a gunshot fire shows up on screen in Counter-Strike 2. To be fair, it's well within the margin of error range when compared to Lenovo's Legion 9, which has a similar panel. And if we're being realistic, it's not actually that much faster compared to last year's maxed out Blade 18. The Blade has advanced Optimus, allowing you to automatically get better FPS in games without a reboot. It's also got the classic mux switch, but that can only be accessed through the BIOS. There's no real point using the mux switch though, as it doesn't change which GPU the ports connect to. G-Sync is only available with Optimus off, and Adaptive Sync is available from the integrated graphics when Optimus is on. So no screen tearing as long as your frame rate is higher than the minimum refresh rate range. Hey, future Jared here, recording this a few weeks after the rest of the video, because I've been working on a problem with Razer. We had a serious problem trying to use this laptop on the discrete NVIDIA graphics. Basically, if we use Advanced Optimus to swap from Optimus on to Optimus off, or the mux switch in the BIOS, more often than not, the screen would just go black. The only way to fix it was either to connect a monitor or to turn the laptop off and on again. The screen also went black anytime I closed the lid with it on DGPU mode. Opening the lid would be instantly black screened, and I think this might have prevented it from sleeping properly too. Razer have been able to reproduce these problems, and they've reported them as bugs with NVIDIA. And for what it's worth, we're currently reviewing Acer's Helios 18. It's still early days, but we have had a few black screens in DGPU mode on that too, so it might not be a Blade specific issue. Either way, hopefully it's fixed soon. There's a 1440p camera above the screen in the middle, it's got IR for Windows Hello Face Unlock, and it's got the added benefit of making it look like you're living in the Matrix. And here's what it sounds like while typing on the keyboard. There's also a physically sliding privacy shutter for the camera. Time to see what Razer's Blade 18 can do in games. We've tested it with these settings. Cyberpunk 2077 was running great at 1080p ultra settings, though if you're using the 1080p 440Hz mode, you'd probably want to throw on DLSS and multi-frame generation to get the most from it. It's still reaching 120 FPS at 1440p, and it's sitting alongside a number of other maxed out 5090 laptops that we've tested, and it's 24% faster compared to Razer's smaller Blade 16, as that one runs with lower power limits. At 4K, the Blade 18 is technically the best result we've ever measured, but the difference between the top results is all well within the margin of error range. Regardless, the Blade 18 offers great performance compared to competing options. It's one of the best performing laptops in Alan Wake 2 at 1080p high settings, but the 25090 Legions had a slight edge. Granted, I doubt you'd be able to tell the difference between these results in a blind test anyway. It's a similar deal at 1440p. The Blade 18 is offering great performance compared to other laptops with the same CPU and GPU inside, and that's the case at 4K too. Of course, you'd want to use DLSS upscaling to boost performance here and make it a better experience. It just doesn't make much sense for us to benchmark with DLSS on performance mode, as that upscales from 1080p, and you can just check the 1080p comparison data for that. Black Myth Wukong was also running well at 1080p high settings, and was close to the other 18-inch 5090 laptops tested. That continues at 1440p. It's one of the best laptops we've tested in gaming, thanks to its combination of high CPU and GPU power limits. Likewise at 4K, it's only just barely beaten by a couple of other 18-inch options, both of which are actually a fair bit heavier. It was possible to boost FPS above 60 at 4K in all three games with DLSS on performance mode, and ray tracing on a level that actually makes a noticeable visual improvement to the game. But of course, you could forget about tracing those rays and just use DLSS if you're only after an FPS boost. Here are the 3D mark results. Creator performance was excellent, as you'd expect from top-tier hardware. Combined with the fast SD card slot and good-looking screen, this could be a good option for creators. Though if you are after an 18-inch laptop for that, the higher color gamut and brightness from mini LED options might be worth looking at instead. The BIOS looks extremely basic and dated compared to other brands, but the usual core functionality is there. There's not much in the way of customization that's not already available through software. Linux support was perfect. Everything I tested worked on the latest Ubuntu 25.10. Pricing and availability are constantly changing over time, so check the links below the video for updates and for current sales. If the Blade 18 has a good sale, we'll list it on our gaminglaptop.deals website. We update that every day to include the best sales, so make sure you check it out regularly to save money on your next gaming laptop with that link below. At the time of recording in mid-October, Razer's Blade 18 with RTX 5070 Ti graphics starts from $2,800 on sale. Stepping up to the 5080 will cost you an extra $500, while the 5090 version I've tested here is on sale for $4,200. And then the absolute maxed out configuration is even more. These are actually the best sales that Razer have had on the Blade 18 so far, but it's still quite expensive, to the point where we haven't actually included any of them on our gaminglaptop.deals website. At least not just yet. Just because the price is good for a Blade doesn't mean it's good value that we can recommend. But assuming the price is right for you, or it comes down a bit more in future, is the Blade 18 even worth considering? Let's summarize the good and the bad to find out. Starting with the good, the Blade 18's build quality is on another level as it's CNC milled from a solid block of aluminum. It's thinner and lighter compared to other 18-inch laptops. Performance is excellent, both in and out of games, and way better than last gen. And it's got the fastest screen we've ever tested in an 18-inch laptop. Great for competitive players. The keyboard lighting looks great, the speakers sound good, it's got good ports, battery life is alright as far as 18-inch beasts go, and Linux support is excellent. As for the bad, the main thing is the screen not working a lot of the time in DGPU mode, but I'd be very surprised if that's not fixed in an update. It would have been nice if there was a mini LED option for those who prefer it. The RGB on the bottom window seems pointless because you don't even get the option to see it once the lid is closed. Hopefully that one's just on me not being able to find the right option in software. But even still, if that's the case, it means there's room for Synapse to improve. Not to mention the random bugs we found throughout the Synapse software that need to be fixed. Upgrade options would be fine for a 16-inch laptop, but most 18-inch models either offer more M.2 or RAM slots. The power cable is hard to pull out, Wi-Fi is on the slower side for such a premium model, and it seems crazy to me that it doesn't come with faster PCIe Gen 5 storage or DDR5 6400 RAM at this price. Bottom line, assuming you don't have to deal with that black screen issue, the Blade 18 is actually a pretty great gaming laptop if you want a bigger 18-inch screen while still keeping the overall laptop not as thick and heavy compared to other options, all while still offering competitive performance and good thermals. But you'll definitely be paying a premium for all of that, on top of the fact that 18-inch laptops generally cost more already. I'm going to compare the best 7 18-inch gaming laptops from 7 brands in a dedicated video soon, so make sure you're subscribed for that comparison. Until then, Lenovo's Legion 9 has a lot to offer as far as 18-inch gaming laptops go, so that one's worth checking out next if you're after a bigger 18-inch machine. Right now, if I was picking an 18-inch laptop, that would be my choice. So I'll see you over in that one.